In the outskirts of Bethlehem, amidst the arid and unforgiving desert, a drama of life and death was unfolding. Rachel, Jacob's beloved wife, was locked in a desperate battle for life as she gave birth to their second son. The scorching sun, indifferent, seemed to silently observe the unfolding tragedy, while Rachel, in deep agony, bravely fought to bring her child into the world. Her cries of pain echoed through Jacob's caravan of tents, and he, with a torn heart, helplessly watched his beloved struggle. With each breath, hope dwindled until finally a fragile cry of a newborn filled the air, bringing a brief spark of joy. But this joy was overshadowed by overwhelming sadness. Exhausted and weak, Rachel breathed her last, leaving Jacob engulfed in profound and inconsolable grief. Thus, Benjamin was born amidst tears and longing, forever marked by his mother's ultimate sacrifice. But what truly happened to Rachel? Does the Bible explain the true reason for her death? That's what we'll explore in today's video. As always, I kindly ask you to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Now, let's dive into the video. Rachel, one of the most captivating figures in the Bible, has her story intertwined with Jacob's in a unique and emotional way. Their encounter is recorded in the book of Genesis and is a timeless tale of love. Fleeing from his brother Esau's wrath, Jacob left his homeland in Canaan and headed to Haran, where his uncle Laban lived. His journey was long and arduous, but he carried with him the hope of finding refuge and a new life. Upon reaching the region of Paddan Aram, Jacob came across a well where shepherds gathered to water their flocks. It was there that he first saw Rachel. Rachel, a shepherdess, was tending her father Laban's sheep. Jacob was immediately captivated by her beauty and grace. He approached and, with a great display of strength, removed the stone covering the well, allowing Rachel's sheep to drink. This act of kindness and physical prowess impressed Rachel, and their meeting quickly became a memorable occasion. Jacob introduced himself to Rachel as the son of Rebekah, Laban's sister, and was warmly received. Rachel hurried home to tell her father about Jacob's arrival. Laban, upon hearing about his nephew's presence, hastened to meet him and welcomed him into his home. Already smitten with Rachel, Jacob decided he wanted to marry her. He proposed a deal to Laban. He would work 7 years as a shepherd in exchange for Rachel's hand in marriage. Laban agreed to the arrangement, and Jacob began to work diligently and lovingly, counting the days until he could marry his beloved. The 7 years passed swiftly for Jacob, so great was his love for Rachel. He said to Laban, "Give me my wife, for my time is completed, that I may marry her." Genesis 29:21. Laban then prepared a great feast and invited all the men of the place to the wedding celebration. However, Laban had other plans. On the wedding night, he deceived Jacob by substituting Rachel with his older daughter, Leah. Covered by the wedding veil and the darkness of night, Jacob did not realize the deception until the next morning, when he discovered he had married Leah instead of Rachel. Jacob was furious and confronted Laban. Laban explained that in their land, it was customary to marry off the eldest daughter first. However, he offered a solution. Jacob could marry Rachel as well, provided he agreed to work another 7 years. Disappointed but deeply in love with Rachel, Jacob accepted the deal and completed the wedding week with Leah before marrying Rachel. Another 7 years passed, and Jacob finally married Rachel, ending up with 2 wives. Jacob's family life with his 2 wives, Rachel and Leah, was marked by intense rivalry. Although Jacob deeply loved Rachel, it was Leah who initially bore him children. Leah gave birth to 4 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. With each birth, she hoped to win Jacob's love, but he continued to favor Rachel. Meanwhile, Rachel suffered deeply from her infertility. She envied Leah's fertility and despaired over her inability to bear children for Jacob. In a moment of great anguish, Rachel said to Jacob, "Give me children or I will die." Genesis 31. Jacob responded with frustration, reminding her that it was God who controlled fertility. To compete with her sister, Rachel resorted to an ancient custom. She gave her servant Bilhah to Jacob as a concubine so that she could bear children on Rachel's behalf. Bilhah bore 2 sons, Dan and Naphtali. Not to be outdone, Leah also gave her servant Zilpah to Jacob, who bore him 2 more sons, Gad and Asher. Determined to find a solution, Rachel tried various methods believed to aid conception. Among Rachel's practices was the use of mandrakes, a plant considered powerful for promoting fertility. One day, Reuben, Leah's eldest son, found mandrakes in the field and brought them to his mother. Upon seeing the plant, Rachel asked Leah for some mandrakes, hoping they would help her conceive. Aware of Rachel's desperate desire, Leah agreed to trade the mandrakes for one night with Jacob, who would normally have spent the night with Rachel. Despite her hopes pinned on the mandrakes, Rachel did not conceive immediately after using them. Her frustration continued to grow, and she persisted in her quest to find a way to fulfill her dream of becoming a mother. Time passed, and Rachel continued to fervently pray to God, seeking the blessing of motherhood. Finally, God heard her cry and intervened. Genesis 30:22 states, "Then God remembered Rachel, he listened to her, and enabled her to conceive." Rachel conceived and gave birth to a son, whom she named Joseph, saying, "May the Lord add to me another son." Genesis 30:24. The birth of Joseph was a moment of immense joy and relief for Rachel. The name Joseph means, "he will add," reflecting Rachel's hope that God would grant her more children. Joseph's arrival not only restored Rachel's hope, but also solidified her position in the family, bringing her new honor and respect. Joseph would become a central figure in Israel's history. His extraordinary destiny, which led him to become governor of Egypt and save his family during a famine, attests to his mother's importance in the biblical narrative. Years after Joseph's birth, Rachel's hope for a second child finally came to fruition. Rachel became pregnant again, a blessing that brought great joy and anticipation to the entire family. By this time, Jacob had left Laban's land and was returning to his homeland, Canaan, as instructed by God. As Rachel's pregnancy progressed, she was aware of the risks she faced, especially considering the challenges she had overcome to conceive Joseph. However, the happiness of carrying another child outweighed her fears. This second child would be the fulfillment of her expressed desire in Joseph's name, may he add, a manifestation of God's continued blessing in her life. Jacob's caravan was nearing Ephrath, later known as Bethlehem, when Rachel went into labor. Conditions at that time were harsh, with no modern medical assistance for complicated deliveries. Rachel felt the intensity of childbirth pains, which quickly escalated into serious complications. Genesis 35:16-17 describes this distressing moment. Then they moved on from Bethel. While they were still some distance from Ephrath, Rachel began to give birth and had great difficulty, and as she was having great difficulty in childbirth, the midwife said to her, "Don't despair, for you have another son." The midwife's words brought some comfort to Rachel amidst her extreme pain. She knew her life was at risk, but clung to the promise of seeing her second son born. Rachel's agony was intense, reflecting the severity of the complications she faced. When she finally gave birth, Rachel was exhausted and on the brink of death. With her last strength, she named the newborn Ben-Oni, which means son of my sorrow or son of my suffering. This name reflected the deep sadness and suffering Rachel experienced during childbirth. The birth of Ben-Oni was a moment of extreme ambiguity, with the joy of new life mixed with the imminent sorrow of losing his mother. Deeply affected by Rachel's death, Jacob made an important decision regarding his son's name. He chose to change Ben-Oni's name to Benjamin, which means son of the right hand, or son of happiness. This name change held significant meaning in several ways. First, it served as a tribute to Jacob's profound love for Rachel, transforming the negative connotation associated with Ben-Oni's birth into something positive. Second, the name Benjamin symbolized the honor and special position he would have in the family, being Jacob and Rachel's last-born son. Genesis 35:18 records this poignant moment. As she breathed her last, for she was dying, she named her son Ben-Oni, but his father named him Benjamin. Benjamin, Rachel's second son, would become the ancestor of one of the 12 tribes of Israel, the tribe of Benjamin. This tribe played a crucial role in the formation and development of the Israelite nation. One of Benjamin's most notable descendants was Saul, the first king of Israel. Saul's choice as king marked a turning point in Israelite history, transitioning from a tribal confederation led by judges to a centralized monarchy. Another prominent figure descended from the tribe of Benjamin is the Apostle Paul, also known as Saul of Tarsus. In his epistles, Paul identifies himself as an Israelite, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin, Romans 11:1. Rachel's death was a devastating blow to Jacob and the family. Deeply saddened, Jacob buried Rachel on the way to Ephrath. He erected a pillar over her tomb, a sign of his eternal love and a lasting memorial to Rachel. Genesis 35:19-20 states, "So Rachel died and was buried on the way to Ephrath," that is, Bethlehem. Over her tomb Jacob set up a pillar, and to this day that pillar marks Rachel's tomb. The pillar over Rachel's tomb remained a symbol of her life and Jacob's love. Even in later generations, Rachel's memory and her role in the formation of the people of Israel were honored. The cause of Rachel's death remains a mystery. Some scholars and theologians suggest that her death may be linked to specific events and statements during her life. Three main theories emerge from scriptures and traditions to explain what happened. One of the most common interpretations is that Rachel was cursed by Jacob, leading to her premature death. This theory is based on a specific incident involving Laban's household gods. When Jacob decided to flee Laban's household, Rachel stole her father's idols and hid them. Laban, upon realizing the idols were missing, pursued Jacob and his family. When Laban confronted Jacob about the stolen idols, Jacob, unaware that Rachel was the culprit, proclaimed a curse, "But whoever has your gods will not live." Genesis 31:32. Some interpret this statement as a curse that inadvertently came true in Rachel's death. Although the Bible does not explicitly connect the curse to Rachel's death, this interpretation suggests that Jacob's words had a mystical or prophetic impact, resulting in tragic consequences for Rachel. This view is widely debated, as it hinges on the belief that words spoken in ignorance can have fatal power. The incident involving Laban's idols raises questions about Rachel's morality and religious devotion. By stealing the idols, Rachel committed an act that went against devotion to God. Some scholars interpret Rachel's death as a divine punishment for her sin of idolatry. In this context, Rachel's death during Benjamin's birth would be seen as a direct consequence from God for her moral transgression of stealing and keeping her father's pagan idols. This view is supported by the biblical narrative, which often depicts God severely punishing idolatry. However, it's crucial to note that the Bible does not explicitly link the act of stealing the idols to Rachel's death, so this interpretation remains speculative and subject to theological analysis. Another intriguing theory relates to a statement made by Rachel earlier in her life, when she was still barren and deeply desperate for children. In Genesis 31, Rachel said to Jacob, "Give me children, or I shall die." This statement can be seen as a hyperbolic expression of her anguish and desperate desire to become a mother. Some interpreters, however, view these words as prophetic or self-fulfilling. The theory suggests that Rachel, by uttering these words in a moment of intense emotion, somehow predetermined her fate. Rachel's death in childbirth while giving birth to her second son, Benjamin, would be a tragic and literal fulfillment of her statement. While this view hinges on the belief in the performative power of words, especially in intense emotional contexts, it also highlights human vulnerability and the mystery of fate in biblical narratives. While neither of these theories has conclusive grounding in Scripture, they reflect the complexities of biblical interpretation and human attempts to understand tragic events through theological and moral perspectives. Rachel's story is rich in symbolism and meaning, and her tragic death while giving birth to Benjamin remains a point of reflection. However, Rachel's life and death are not just historical events, but also carry spiritual and moral lessons that continue to resonate and inspire faith and reflection. More important than finding the cause of her death is understanding the meanings and lessons the Bible brings us. Rachel is a figure who embodies human suffering and the search for divine blessings. Her story reflects the complex relationship between humanity and God, where personal trials and desires intersect with the divine plan. Despite her initial hardships, Rachel's story shows divine sovereignty and response to the sincere pleas of the faithful. Through her children and descendants, Rachel left a unique mark on the history of Israel and continues to inspire generations with her faith, resilience, and devotion. Now, I'd like to hear your opinion. Do you believe in any of these theories, or do you think all of this was part of the divine plan? Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you've stayed with us this far, please consider subscribing to our channel, liking this video, and hitting the notification bell so you don't miss any of our content. Thank you for watching. Take care, and may God bless you.